Chelsea have a problem. We can't stop scoring hat-tricks. Under this new ownership in the previous 2 years, Chelsea had only scored 3 hat-tricks in total, all from last season. Nicholas Jackson away at Spurs, Cole Palmer against Everton and Cole Palmer against Manchester United. And this season, Chelsea have already scored 3 hat-tricks. Noni Madueke away at Wolves, Cole Palmer against Brighton and Christopher Nkunku against Barrow. Now it might have only been against the mighty Barrow, but Nkunku has proved in his short time at Chelsea, in which he's been completely decimated by injuries in his first season, that the guy scores goals. Before we get into this Christopher Nkunku deep dive, I just want to say a massive thanks for the response in the last couple of videos. It's been absolutely mental in terms of subscribers, likes, all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me, so like and subscribe to stick around. In fact, Nkunku has scored 9 goals for Chelsea in 23 appearances, and we know those are not from all starts. Those are from a minimal amount of minutes. Now, I'm no stat shagger. We do not like just going after stats on this channel. I'll be transparent with you. I know some of you are new to this, but I like to watch players. I'm going off what I see. But in Christopher Nkunku, he is someone that definitely delivers goals or assists. That's something he did in his time at Leipzig, but at Chelsea, he's currently averaging a goal every 95.2 minutes. That's basically a game of football. That's basically, with injury time and everything, if you account for all that, Christopher Nkunku is scoring a goal a game. That's the record we're looking at the moment. And despite that, he can't break his way into the first team. And you can't even argue with that. And the reason, in my opinion, you can't really quite argue that is because of what Nicholas Jackson gives you. I know in the media he's had a lot of critics in terms of some of the big chances missed, particularly last season. But this is a guy that gives you an all-round package as a striker. He's someone who's involved in link-up, he runs the channels really well, he presses well, and he'll still give you those goals, even if he has his misses, because he puts himself in enough positions to have those misses because he will still score goals. Now, what Nkunku quite clearly has over Nicholas Jackson is being far more clinical. There's no doubt about that. In fact, Christopher Nkunku might be the most clinical player in the squad. I mean, you could argue for your Cole Palmers. I'd even say Reece James when he's there is someone I know I can put my house on in putting away a chance. But Christopher Nkunku so far, with the minimal minutes he has, shows the guy gets goals. Now that's a good problem to have. We've got a player here that's scoring a goal a game roughly, and he can't break in. So how could he break in? Because realistically, I do believe he's only competed with Nicholas Jackson. Nkunku is a player who, despite the minimal minutes we've seen at Chelsea, you can't quite pin him down in terms of what he is. It's a bit like the Havertz mystery we had at Chelsea for a few years, where as fans we're all looking in thinking, where exactly does this guy slot in? And Nkunku, for me, is not a winger. We've seen him do a couple shifts on the wing. He's not there. And we've got enough ample support out wide that that doesn't need to be the case. Now, is he someone that could play the number 10? Because obviously you're not going to break in ahead of Cole Palmer. And they kind of use João Felix in that position when he tends to come on. So I don't think Nkunku is quite a 10. I don't know if he's quite got the creativity to have that role, although I do believe he is sort of that second striker that can team up with Jackson very well, and they will have some nice link up here and there. But in terms of how Chelsea's structured, you would say Nkunku's probably best suited to being the 9. What he does give you that perhaps Jackson lacks, because of what Jackson gives you elsewhere, is that Nkunku is someone that stays in the parameter of the box. He can sniff out a goal, he sniffs out a chance. We saw that at Bournemouth. His movement there is phenomenal, by the way. And Nkunku has this ability to sort of weave in and out. We are looking at minimal minutes at Chelsea, but Liverpool, his goal away, that was a terrible loss, but he did get the consolation goal, and it was brilliant movement in the box, evading challenges. And he did the same at Bournemouth. The goals are very similar when you look at them back, and he has that ability to quickly find a little space and get the shot off. And it's something that top 9s do have in their arsenal. Even in his past spell at Leipzig, you know, he scored a hat-trick away at the Etihad. And the guy's no slouch when it comes to heading the ball, despite his frame suggesting maybe he wouldn't be brilliant aerially. He is. I mean, we saw the header he scored away at Wolves. Again, another consolation in a loss from last season. But he's shown he can be that box presence. Despite his height, meaning perhaps he's vertically challenged, he is not aerially challenged. He can find that space and get a header off as well. He's got that goal-scoring instinct. And that's something you need, and it's an amazing asset to have coming off the bench in particular when we do need to grab a goal. I remember Solomon Kalou was excellent for it at Chelsea. I remember a winner who scored away at Watford, but I'm not comparing Nkunku to Kalou, but you get my point. You need these players that can chip in when not everything's going our way. Maybe Cole Palmer has hit the bar about 3 times rather than score his goal. Maybe Nicholas Jackson is having one of those wasteful days, and you can bring on an Nkunku and change the game in a different way. We weren't having much of a sniff against Bournemouth, and he still managed to rescue those points, those 3 points. But it does beg the question, because we're seeing a guy that scores goals. Whenever he plays, he does score goals. Does he deserve more game time? And like I said, I would still be starting Jackson at the moment, but it does beg the question that in the future, will we use Nkunku as a 9 more? Will there be more rotation between Jackson and Nkunku? It's definitely something I'd like to see, because at the moment, we saw Nkunku start against Barrow and he scores a hat-trick, but we haven't really seen him start in the first team. We haven't really seen Nkunku get the joy of playing with Cole Palmer too much. The amount of runs he could make and his box presence could really benefit from having the player in Cole Palmer behind him. And like I said, we can't have seen much of those two on the same pitch. I definitely think it's something we will see more throughout the season. Obviously, injuries are something to account for, and the fact that we have Europe, so there will be more rotation going on. And at the moment, Nkunku will be that conference guy, but he probably wants to be more than that conference guy. And like I said, this is a very positive problem to have. We're in a nice position at the moment. We've had a long couple of years under this new ownership of moaning about a number of things, particularly putting away our chances. And here we have a guy who's doing it for fun, but his biggest problem at the moment is that the majority of the squad has been putting them away for fun as well. Any other time in the last couple of years, particularly last season when he was actually injured, Nkunku would be a dead cert to start. But at the moment, it's proving tough to break in. And that's something that will inevitably be on his mind in a player of Christopher Nkunku's quality. Like, let's be real here, guys. We can't completely ignore that. The guy won't forever want to be on the bench. But while we're winning and while we're having success and while he's coming on, he's getting those minutes, he's still chipping in, things will tick over, but it won't be smooth sailing throughout. We know we're not completely stupid. As much as we're enjoying a really good period at the moment, and we're fully aware of that, and we're seeing those signs we wanted to see on a far more frequent basis, there will be stickier periods where we do look to have players that can bail us out, and Nkunku is just that. And perhaps then he'll get a few more starts. Maybe for other players are struggling slightly. And from what we've seen, you'd imagine he would grab that chance by the scruff of the neck. Like, the guy looks like he can really contribute to this Chelsea side. And he's perhaps going under the radar in terms of some of our assets. But if he were to fully remain, on a consistent basis throughout, a player that is merely a backup, that's a top player. And they might look in the future for some sort of move, but at the moment, we just need to keep things ticking on. I think it's something in the future that Enzo Maresca will be looking at, and also will be fully aware of, that the guy will need more minutes. Managing this big squad, not a 40-man squad like the media likes to report, but in terms of the plethora of attacking talent that we have in João Felix, in Neto, in Sancho, in Nkunku, in Jackson, in Palmer, Madueke, even Chukwuemeka, Dewsbury Hall, like, there are a lot of players. So in order to keep them happy, results help and minutes help. So I do think those rotations will happen throughout the season, but I just think it's something to keep aware of, because it's kind of like we've got this guy that in the minimal time he's had scores for fun and yet can't quite break in, and he will be looking at that. He was a big money move for Chelsea, and obviously the hype kind of died because of the injuries, and I think even media scrutiny towards the player, it's non-existent, because they're almost forgetting that we bought this guy. We've had him for a long time, but we've not really got to see him yet. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. I'm looking forward to seeing more of when he starts with those top players, or perhaps even starting in tandem with Jackson and Nkunku. How would that work? Like, I'm not comparing Jackson to Haaland here, but it's a bit of a Jackson Alvarez situation. Jackson Alvarez, what am I on about? As an outsider looking at City, you did look at Alvarez and think, this guy's too good to be on the bench every week. I know he played a lot of minutes last season, and he ended up moving to Atletico because he wanted to be the main man. He knew he was capable of being the main man elsewhere at a top side. And in having Nkunku on the bench, yes, it's an amazing option, and we need to reap the benefit of that. But it's just something to keep aware of, because these players are going to want minutes, obviously. And I'm excited to see them get those minutes. The biggest problem here is, how do you give them those minutes when the team's ticking along so nicely? It's like, why try and fix what's not broken? But equally, is there an upside to Nkunku starting? Could he be doing better? I don't know. For me, when I look at Jackson and Nkunku, and obviously with more data to go off with Jackson, just in terms of what we've seen, right? If you amalgamated their best strengths, you'd have the perfect striker. I think Nkunku's more of a box presence than Jackson. I think he's more clinical. And I think those are probably the weaker assets of Jackson's game. Whereas Jackson, link-up play, Nkunku's no slouch when it comes to link-up play or pressing, put it that way. But I think Jackson probably excels further in those aspects. He runs the channels better. So if you just mashed these two players together, if you mashed them together, you'd pretty much have prime Drogba, wouldn't you? You'd have everything you could possibly want. Maybe the screamers. Can Nkunku score a screamer? We've seen him score free kicks in the past. If we can have him taking right-footed free kicks, Cole taking the left, we'd be laughing. But in terms of those two players, they just give you completely different things, and that's something that's going to be incredibly useful going forward. We've got a very versatile squad. Enzo Maresca's mentioned that multiple times in terms of the versatility of it. It's something to utilise, it's something to adapt to different games, and not just in terms of game states, but in terms of the opposition we face. Like, Nkunku will be far more suited, I'd say, to playing a lower block. Like, maybe even against Forest this week, you don't really want to drop Jackson, but in someone in Nkunku, you know that Forest are going to defend very well. They did a fantastic job at Anfield, and they were brilliant on the counter as well, so they're a threat in that regard. But in terms of the fact that the majority of play will be in Forest's half, you would assume, having that guy in the box that knows where to be, just to get on the end of a little tap-in, little simple things, little simple goals like that, if you can keep chipping in with those, they're incredibly useful. Whereas maybe Jackson, against a team that we're going to have less of the ball, he's going to be pressing more. He's going to be running those channels more. Like I said, what a brilliant problem to have. Problems at Chelsea being the fact that a player that's averaging a goal every game maybe could get more minutes, or how do we find more minutes? How do we account for more minutes for a guy that's averaging a goal a game? That is mental, isn't it? And these hat tricks, they need to keep happening. Who's the next hat trick scorer? Is it Renato Vega? Is he going to bag a hattie this season? Tell you what, actually, I'd love to see a Renato Vega goal. That guy gives it beans. That guy gives it. He's Chelsea. You can feel it, right? I know we've had minimal minutes of him, but he feels it. I feel like he absolutely loves that he's here. So when he scores a goal, the roof is going to go off. He's going to go nuts. He'll be jumping in the crowd and all sorts. I can't wait. And Nkunku, he's got that coolness about him. He's got those balloons. You know what I mean? He's just got balloons in his socks. The guy knows he's going to score. I mean, we had to wait a while on those balloons last season because he was just chilling in the treatment room. But this season and last season, whenever he kind of came on, that balloon came out. Other than consolation goals at Wolves and Liverpool, it wouldn't have really fit the mood if we were 4-0 down to Liverpool and he's pulling out balloons. At the moment, it's party time, and I want to see those balloons popping out a lot more. Let me know what you think in terms of where Nkunku could be utilised best, or do you think he should be starting right now? Should he be getting more game time for a player that contributes this frequently? And of course, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. It lets YouTube know this is the place to be. It's the Chelsea place to be. It's your place to be. Up the Chelsea.